let's go over with the stats for the community on this past month. So we had 2 new open source developers, which is great. Actually, considering that we are in summer season, we are very, very close to 5,000 stars. So please, all of you that have not started the project yet, it would be really awesome if you could put the time. We're going to share the GitHub link in Slack. And this is one way that really helps us into move the work and make sure that anyone else also is aware of the awesome work that we're putting here. We are also almost at 6,400 Slack community members. For those of you that are not yet in Slack, this is the best way where you can chat with the contributors, chat with the rest of the community, get help in our support channel. So if you're interested in the project, getting started with a POC or whatnot, this is your best bet to make sure that you are unblocked and that you can share your findings and your knowledge with the rest of the community. And finally, if you are not following us yet in Twitter or Meetup, this is where you can find new updates about the project, or even when we are going to host next community meetings. So make sure that you're following the project in all of these pages. Going back into the rest of the metrics in there, as you can see, a bunch of PRs keep getting merged week after week after week. So we are into more than 250 PRs in the last 4 weeks. And talking about Slack, we are close to 600 questions in the last 4 weeks. So we try to be as active as possible in the channel. We try to solve as many questions as possible in there so that all of you can get your chance into getting unblocked and into moving forward. And I actually just looking at the names that I see here in the meeting, I see a lot of repeated people that are coming in there, right? So if you're already veterans, if you already know some of the answers to these questions, feel free to chip in. I'm sure that the rest of the people in the community are also going to be very, very grateful of you putting the time in. And even though only 2 contributors were new in this past month, we actually have new total community contributors, and most of them being repeated. So thanks to all of you that are putting the time. You know that we have good first issues in Slack, but if there is any specific issue that you see that maybe it's not yet filed and you are just, let's say, brave enough, or you have the time and the will to go and help us make OpenMetadata better, we would be super grateful if you go, you open a PR. We are also super happy to help you. We have the contributors channel in Slack that you can join as well. And together we can make sure that OpenMetadata is as useful to anyone as possible. And from this list, I would like to make a huge shout out to Matt in this case, because he helped us preparing the GCS storage connector. So we had already the GCS connector for the data lake, but as you know, we have this storage connector ready where you can basically prepare and ingest your structured and partition data. So in this case, he was able to port the logic that we had for S3 into GCS. So in the next release 1.5, this is going to be out for anyone to start using. So thanks again, Matt. Super, super grateful that you put the time in there. And before jumping into the community spotlight, we just wanted to let you know that we want to hear from you, right? We are preparing a survey for this month that we are going to share in our socials. I'm just going to paste it here in the chat as well. What we wanted to show you in, as I was saying at the beginning in this meetup, are the highlights for the 1.5 release. So it's been a bit more than 2 months since we released 1.4.0, and we have actually been able to close more than 200 issues and 600 PRs. And the pieces that I'm going to highlight here, it's definitely not all the work that the team has put in, but the pieces that I'm going to highlight, so you can see there's a big chunk of work that has gone into the data quality with new dashboards and new tests, but also we're going to share with you updates on how we are moving our domains into the next level, how we are even make it easier to explore and find the right data. And I guess that also some of you are going to be very excited about this Pydantic V2. It ended up being quite a bit of work, but we are very happy to say that now we can properly go to Airflow 2.9 and that we can now properly support Pydantic v2. So the release candidate for at least the first release candidate for the 1.5 release is already out. So if some of you had these blockers about using Airflow or about using Pydantic and you want to give this new release a go, this is going to be super helpful to make sure that we are properly covering all of these edge cases about this migration. Also, as we were saying, the GCS storage connector is out, and we also added Flink, and we are the first metadata platform to actually bring out the SAP ERP connector. So if you have SAP ERP, you want to start playing with that, you are going to have all of these goodies already in 1.5. And the list does not stop here. We are also adding the API as a metadata asset, and we are revamping how the ingestion UI looks like. But this not only stops in OpenMetadata, right? Because we also have some new features that we're going to share today in the Collate side, one of them being Freshness tests, Anomaly Detection, customizable data insights. And if you are in the world of Azure and you have a signups instance that you would like to connect, this is also going out as well. But before diving deep there, I would also like just to maybe zoom out a bit on the current features and the upcoming things that we have into the data quality, right? Because what we always say is that Open Metadata is more than a data catalog, right? It's this unified platform for discovery, for quality, and for governance. And we have put a tremendous effort on making sure that our quality and observability models are really a huge pillar of the platform, right? So we have native data quality framework. You can create the test from the UI and you can schedule the tests from the UI as well. Everything, as you know, is backed via a very rich API, which not only helps us to prepare third-party integrations, be it from dbt, be it from Great Expectations, but it also allows you, if you have your in-home built data quality module, to really just directly send all of these results into Open Metadata as well. We have a native alerting system to make sure that we are covering this end-to-end process of creating the test, detecting the failure, bringing the right people in, and not only that, but also managing the incidents, right? How we can share all of these updates with the rest of the organization. How can we make sure that we are properly troubleshooting new incidents, new errors on our tests based on the learnings that we have from the past. And all of that, bringing in the rest of the context of the catalog, being able to have this lineage also helps us with the root cause analysis of all of these errors. And as part of our Collate offering, we also have this sampling of failed rows that will make it even easier and even faster to figure out which are the records that are not behaving as expected. So all of these pieces are already there, are baked into the platform. And in the 1.5, we're bringing a new data quality dashboard. We are bringing two new kinds of tests for data difference and for freshness. We are allowing to schedule multiple data quality pipelines. As we said, also, we are adding this anomaly detection, and we are improving the alert templates. And not only that, because the story does not end here, because in the roadmap, at least for 1.6, we already have planned performance improvements, custom dashboards to make sure that you can tune a bit better and understand even better how your data quality tests are being covered based on your business terms or any specific need that you have in your organization. And we want to even give more flexibility on the alerts template on how each piece of information gets sent to your user via these custom alert templates in there. So let's jump in now into these different features that we have for 1.5 on the quality side. And the first one would be this new data quality dashboard. Let me go. I think that this is part of my customers table. Perfect. And as you can see, now we are basically grouping all of your different tests into dimensions, right? And this is a very easy way that you can use in order to understand which parts of your data are being covered properly versus which other parts might actually be lacking either new tests or which parts are actually more prone to passing or more prone to failing. And we have all of these different boxes, right, about the accuracy, the consistency, the integrity, and whatnot. So let's take a look at what each of these pieces means, right? When we're talking about integrity tests, we're talking about making sure that your data remains correct, right? For example, the row count. So I can go into my table, I can find the integrity test, and I can see that exactly I have some test about the row count of this table that is failing. But I can also check the consistency of my data, right? I need to make sure that the same amount of information matches when it's being held into different tables. Or I need to make sure that my data is accurate enough, right? This is also why we added the data freshness or completeness tests if we want to check nullability, or uniqueness if we need to check that actually only single records are being used, or even double checking that our data follows the right business rules. So now you have all of this right view that it makes it even faster to analyze what's the root cause of each of your errors, right? Because here, if I come, I can see that maybe some data quality test is failing, and I can maybe easily say, okay, this is a validity test that is not behaving properly. I see that actually I have some columns that are not matching specific regex. And as we were seeing even before in Collate as well, we can gather the sample data. So I'm expecting here my table or my column here in this case to follow this specific regex onto my last name. And I see that some of these IDs actually have a dot, which might not need to be here, right? So all of these baked on this new data quality dashboard is going to make it even easier to understand how our data is behaving. Now, we talked about consistency, right? We talked about making sure that our data behaves properly throughout the ETL processes. So one easy way that we can do that is via this new data difference test. So let me go back into, actually, I have something ready on my orders table. And as you can see in my consistency tests, I have a few things going on. But just for now, let me create, or at least show you how you can create a new test. And one thing to highlight here is that up until this release, you could come and add all of these tests into different columns, have all of these types out of the box. But there was a limitation, right? Which is that all of these tests only took into account one single table, the table that I'm actually using here to configure all of these assertions. With this data different test, what you are actually going to be able to do is to compare the data between two tables. So in this case, I'm in my orders table, and let's imagine that I have specific ETL process that transforms this data from orders into my processed orders. So what I can do in this case is, okay, let's select what are my key columns, what are my primary keys, how can I actually properly compare or at least identify the same record into the two different tables, and I can define which columns I want to compare, right? So if I don't add anything, I'm going to compare absolutely all of the columns, or I can just select here, okay, maybe I just want to compare the status, and even we can add specific predicates, specific where clauses to make sure that only pieces of data are being compared. And all of that, it's just going to really help us maintain all of this consistency of our data. And again, if you are going if you're moving on with Collate, you're going to see the sample data with how these assets here are mismatching. So you can see for this order ID 5, I can easily see that my status went from completed into lost. And maybe this is a change that was not expected to happen. Another new test that we have here is our freshness data quality test, right? Because I want to make sure that I am checking updated information. It's not good enough if my data is from the last week or is from the last month. I need to make sure that my data is properly up to date. So in this case, I come back into my orders table, select here that my data needs to be fresh. I can specify which column I need to check in this case. Maybe I need to make sure that my orders are not older than 1 day, 1 week, whatever it is that makes sense, I can add here the amount in seconds, submit it, and we're good to go. So again, even making it easier that your data is properly valid. And not only that, but we were also talking about the anomaly detection, right? And the goal here is that we know that some tests, they are easy to configure, right? I know that in some rules, I want, okay, my data cannot be null, or I cannot have repeated values, or maybe there are some other tests where actually we need specific functional knowledge, right? I need to be able to say, okay, my data should not be older than 1 day, or my data should be greater than 0, or whatnot. But what happens if the data naturally evolves, right? For example, maybe we're talking about the amount of sales. How can I check that this amount of sales is behaving properly, right? Because I do expect it to keep growing a bit by time, but I still need to be able to see, okay, am I seeing very big drops? Am I seeing very big spikes of data? Because this either means that maybe our backend is not behaving properly, or that any other piece of our infrastructure is actually failing, right? So the main goal of the anomaly detection is that, okay, we can either add the certain bounds in our tests manually. So for example, in this case, we can specify, let me just come back here and do it live because it's always funnier. So I can say here that my amount and specify, okay, the max itself. I can either say, okay, my max value needs to be between 10 and 100, or I can actually just directly select dynamic assertions. So these dynamic assertions, what they are going to do, and I'm going to another table that has this ready. There we go. These dynamic assertions, what they are going to do is they are going to learn from your data. So as you can see here, it might take up to 5 weeks, but we have some baked-in ML models that they are going to keep scanning and being trained on your profiler data. And as they see how the data fluctuates, they are going to help you detect anomalies. They are going to help you detect which specific data points are too out of the, let's say, expected ranges, right? So this is going to really, really boost your data quality detection, because then you don't need to go that deep into having all of this specific knowledge, or you are also going to be able to properly detect how your data is evolving and making sure that the data is evolving at the expected rate. And the last part here on the data quality features are actually that now we are also supporting multiple data quality pipelines scheduling. So before, if you went into the data quality panel, so I'm just going to come here again into my orders table because I like that. Before, if I went to my data quality panel, I was only allowed to have one single pipeline, which is great because it makes the management easy because, okay, we just need to take care of one single pipeline, but it actually reduces the flexibility that we have here, because maybe you have super important tests that you want to run every day, but maybe not so important tests that you would just like to run every week or after any other process, right? So what we're allowing you now is that you can keep adding as many data quality pipelines as you need. You can schedule these data quality pipelines at different rates, at different cadences, and you can select which tests are going to be executed in each data quality pipeline. So either you can manually choose from this list, or you can directly select everything, submit it, and the pipeline is just going to appear here. And again, another nice thing that we have on the 1.5 release is that, as you can see, this ingesting UI is now a bit fancier. It's easier to see if your pipelines are actually active or paused, and we still support the same actions as before. You can just click here on the 3 dots, and you can run, you can redeploy, edit, kill, delete the pipeline, anything that you need to do, but just the UI just feels a bit more modern, a bit more up-to-date with the rest of the changes that the OpenMetadata UI has been having on the past few releases. Now, all of this part of the data quality is great, but before we can actually go and create all of these data quality tests, we need to make sure that we are properly able to find the right piece of data, right? And this is why we're actually revamping and making it even easier to find the right data via this data asset refactor and our data asset widget. Because in the end, open metadata is a platform for everyone, right? It doesn't matter if you're a technical user, if you're a business user, operation users, all of you are playing with data. And all of you should have the easier time possible into finding the right data asset. So we are introducing here a new Explore widget. So if I go now just into the sandbox, if I take a look into our Explore page, as you can see, the panel in the left is going to talk to me about the types of assets, right? It's talking about tables or store procedures or databases and whatnot. But in the end, there's a certain implicit hierarchy here, right? I know that tables belong to schemas and schemas belong to databases, and tables might be at the same level of store procedures. And if you just want to say, okay, I need my Databricks data, you need to use the filters on the top just to see all of these different pieces there. But what happens if your users have already a very clear view that, no, actually the table that I'm interested in, it lives in Databricks or it lives in Snowflake. So that's why if I go into my own instance and I go into the Explore, we have this a bit fancier, right, left-hand side panel where we can say, okay, those are the different databases that you have. And inside Redshift, I have the red database, the red service with the depth database with specific schema that has certain tables. So if I just do the same exercise in the sandbox beta that has a bit of more things going on, I can go into my Snowflake and very easily see all of the different pieces that I have into each of these assets. And we can even either collapse or move this data, and I can see, okay, I have certain tables and certain store procedures. So this makes the searching part even easier without even having to touch the filters at the top. But that's not it, right? Because in the end, we are also saying that different people have different needs. And how a data engineer or a data scientist or a data analyst are going to interact with the tool is going to be very, very different. And that's why we have the customized landing page based on your user personas and the widgets, right? So if you have not played yet with that, the main idea is that if I go here into settings and into my teams and user management, we have this concept of personas, right? The different types of users that are actually going to interact with you in the platform. So in this case, just for the sake of simplicity, I have added both data engineers and data scientists. But now I want to make sure that whenever they are logging into the platform, basically this landing page only shows them the information that they really need to see in order to start jumping into the data, figuring things out, and going on with the work that they have planned, right? So we can do that via preferences, customizing landing page, and we see that each persona has actually their own landing page. So in this case, I can come here. I left this one already empty, and adding new widgets is as easy as clicking on next. And this is the new widget that we created here to make it even easier to explore the data just from your landing page. Because from here, I'm just going to add another tab in there. Just from my landing page, I'm going to be able to say, hey, just give me my Redshift data. And this comes into the Explore already pre-filtered with the pieces of information that might be important to me. So we are even making it easier, making it faster to go from I have specific need to being able to find the right data to move your use case forward. And not only that, as you know, we already added on the last release the data quality widget, but we also added in this one the pipeline status widget. So in this case, I only have one single pipeline, but super easily with this landing page, I'm either going to be able to jump into my data, understand if there's a specific error that requires my attention, or if some of my pipelines are passing, are failing, or whatever is going on in here. So we want to make sure that we continue to build on this customization. So if you have any feedback, if you have any specific needs that you would like to see covered, just feel free to let us know in Slack, let us know what's working for you, what's not working, so that we can keep planning and gathering all of this information so that we can keep building excellent customization so that everyone can make the most out of everything that we have in the platform. Pipeline widget we already discussed, and just a couple of topics left. One being actually the domains, right? As you know, we added all of these domains basically modeled around everything that has to do with data mesh, right? So we want to make sure that big corporations have an easy way to organize who owns which piece of data, who takes care of all of these different assets, who uses these different assets, how these pieces of data can be consumed, et cetera, right? And that's why we added this concept of the domains and the data products, I think already a couple or 3 releases ago. But the point is that we saw a lot of you folks that were actually adding new domains and new domains and new domains, and it was getting hard to manage, right? So what we're adding now is the ability to create subdomains. So for example, I can have my GTM domain, my go-to-market domain, and I can say, okay, I'm going to have 2 subdomains in there, my marketing and my sales. So this already is going to help you organize this information a bit better, but not only that, right? Because the idea of the domains is who owns what, who is responsible of each of these pieces of data. So this marries very well with our role-based access control system. And also this is something new that we are getting out on the 1.5 release, where we are going to allow you to control the permissions that each of your users have based on their domains. So if a user domain matches the domain of specific asset, they are going to be able to visualize that data. And if not, that data is just going to be completely hidden for them. But again, the idea of the data mesh is that while you can keep certain assets private for you, for your own domain, you still want to be able to share some of these pieces of information. And you're actually going to still be able to do that just by creating the data products, right? So this will be your way to publicly showcase which pieces of data are going to be consumable by the rest of the organization. Another interesting addition that we have here in the 1.5 release is that we are adding APIs as metadata assets, because from the beginning, our vision from the product was, okay, we want to really be able to capture the metadata from every part of the organization, right? We really want to be able for anyone in your teams to understand what's the real place where your data is born. Okay, is it an API? Is it another table? Is it whatever backend system that you have? And how it gets transformed through your ETLs. It goes from the backend into the warehouse, from the warehouse into any other, let's say, curated layers that you might have until it reaches the dashboards at the end, right? So adding this API as a metadata asset, it keeps us one step closer into being able to provide you this end-to-end lineage and end-to-end root cause analysis of any failures that are happening here, any compliance that you need to be able to track, any observability that you need to add into your stack. So for now, in the 1.5 release, we are adding support both for the backend and for the UI. And on the next release, we're going to start creating all of these out-of-the-box connectors so that you can just keep passing these open API specifications or whatever else you might need to ingest in there and have it automatically into the platform. Now, just for you to see how these pieces look. So I have here, for example, my OpenMetadata service. Let me jump directly into that. And we have, this is just a subsample, right? So we have a couple of collections in here, my tables collection and my user collection. And in my tables collection, okay, let's try to see what it means or which is the expected payload for me to create a table. So I say that I need to pass schema, name, certain columns and whatnot. And this is also going to give us the response, right? So in the request, I need to pass the schema, and in the response, this is just going to give me the automatically generated ID from the backend. So all of these, we are going to keep adding all of this coverage for the connectors, for the lineage and whatnot, with this very clear goal of providing you this end-to-end visibility, end-to-end tracking of every piece of transformation that is happening into your organizations. And finally, we are going to, because I'm going to be very brief because we already showed that into the last community meeting. We are going to add, inculate these custom data insight dashboards, right? Because in the end, our goal, our objective with the data insights was to help organizations really keep track of how your data is behaving, right? Because you have this very specific goal when you're starting to prepare these governance strategies about cataloging your data, preparing all of these quality tests and whatnot, right? You have one goal, which is to make sure that anyone else in your organization has an easy time into finding their data, collaborating around their data, making sure that the documentation is up to date, making sure that the quality is up to date, making sure that they can properly collaborate and solve incidents and whatnot, right? And all of these different metrics, they are really critical into understanding how our data culture is in the organization, right? And not only that, because it's not only about seeing the dashboard, it's actually being able to make these insights actionable, right? And that's why we also created these KPIs to make sure that you can drive the goals, that you can nudge the people into your organization to say, hey, by the end of the quarter, we actually were expecting to have a 50% coverage of ownership or 50% coverage of descriptions. But the missing piece in there was that every organization is different. And the needs of the different teams and the different organizations might not match, right? There's no one size that fits all. So that's the idea behind making these custom dashboard, custom data insights customizable for you folks so that you can actually create and track the metrics that are important for you, that you can create the KPIs that are important for you. And in this first release, we're going to focus that onto the data assets themselves. So basically, we're just trying to make the swap into which pieces we were supporting before and which pieces we're supporting now with this new revamped backend. So you are going to be able to track the metadata of your tables, of your dashboards, databases, and whatnot. And in the next release, we're going to expand the context and the reach of all of that to also cover the cluster information and the data quality information. So a lot of very interesting things that we are really cooking already onto this 1.5 release, and even cooler stuff that it's going to be out into 1.6. And now, yes, thank you, Fiza, for the time. Thank you, Fiza, for be willing to present how you're using open metadata at Thndr. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity for speaking in the Open Metadata community session for August. I'll be discussing data cataloging and governance using Open Metadata at Thndr. Let me introduce myself. My name is Faza Abid. I am data engineer at Thndr. I have over 5 years of experience in data engineering, ETL, data quality, infrastructure deployment, and scaling the platform, analytics, and big data. Okay, so the agenda for today is what does Thndr do? What architecture of open meta do we have at Thndr? The metadata challenges that we were facing at Thndr. The reason why we went for open metadata, use cases for which we are using open metadata for, and the implementation and deployment of open metadata at Thndr. To start with, what does Thndr do? Thndr is an investment supermarket where you can actually buy stocks, sell stocks, you can invest in gold, you can buy mutual stocks. Currently, we are based in Egypt and United Arab Emirates, and you can do this remotely. You don't even have to visit any branch or anything or have a restrictive capital. The app is relevant and intuitive, and we make sure that our customers are successful in investment. We push on education a lot. We have a platform called Rumble for educating our users, and it's effortless account opening, intuitive investing, and there are flexible funding methods when it comes to Thndr. What has Thndr achieved? We were among the 30 fintech companies mentioned in Forbes in 2023. We were most innovative brokerage firm mentioned by Egyptian Exchange, and we also won the Entrepreneurs Award in 2023. And the features mainly include you can invest in stocks, you can invest in mutual funds, gold, and instant top-ups and withdrawals. Now I'm going to start with what were the challenges, metadata challenges that we were facing at Thndr. So basically, we did not had any automated data quality alerts, we had to manually set up alerting, and there was no way automated where we could check the freshness of data. We used to manually check for freshness and volume and schema detections, and we used to do manual detection of PII columns using a regex. But sometimes what happens is that even your column name would not match the regex, but inside that the value would be a PII. So you need something like machine learning for this type of thing. And we did not had a business or technical glossary. And there was no single place where we could find all our metadata. We had to individually check in our warehouse, in our for pipelines we have to separately check, and for dashboards we have to separately check. So in order to overcome these challenges, we opted for open metadata. Now the reason for choosing open metadata is, number one, it's open source. You can easily deploy it on EKS or Docker image, depending upon the solution that your company is opting for. And the features are really good. They're providing you metadata management, data quality, data lineage. It's like a single solution for all your data cataloging, data governance. And the third thing is their community support. If you reach out to them on Slack, they instantly share the documentation or solve your problem. That's why we opted for open metadata. So this is the current architecture that we have at Thndr. We are getting data from data warehouse, pipelines, and dashboards, and we are ingesting all this data into open metadata. And the components connected to open metadata are Apache Airflow, Elasticsearch, MySQL for storing all the internal metadata that open metadata uses, and we are actually sending all the alerts on Slack. Deployment, we have basically deployed open metadata on multiple EC2 machines, and using Docker Swarm, and we have connected Apache Airflow, Elasticsearch, MySQL. It's important when you're deploying it on production that you rotate JWT tokens as mentioned in the documentation. And if you're deploying it for production environments, it's really good to have SSO. So what are our usage about open metadata at Thndr? We have a small team of 2 data engineers, 1 data platform engineer, and 3 data analysts. And we are basically using the glossary feature, because sometimes it's hard to know the meaning of the columns in data products. So this feature is very relevant, and we are also using it for data quality checks. And especially we have batch ETL. So for batch ETL, it's important to have checks like not having the duplicates and the data was timely updated. Currently, we have small number of data quality tests, but we are growing them. Okay. Also, we have different teams on open metadata like data engineers, data analysts, data interns, etc. And it's easy to collaborate on open metadata. You can assign your team members any task. You can mention them. If any incident happens, you can assign them. So this feature is really good, and we're using it at Thndr. Other feature that we use at Thndr is data discovery. So whenever we have to find anything, let's say I want to find a column user in any table or any type of column I have to find, I can filter that column very easily. So it's automated through open metadata. I can find the metadata, DDLs, definitions of views, store procedures, everything in a single place through open metadata. So data cataloging has become very easy for us at Thndr due to open metadata. We are able to filter it. We are able to filter it on table level, store procedure, database level, and this has become very easier for us. Another feature that stands out for us is data classification. So open metadata has helped us in identifying automatically the PII columns, because what happens is that sometimes your column name doesn't match a regex, but inside that the value is itself a PII. So with open metadata, they use machine learning for identifying the PII columns into sensitive and non-sensitive. Like in the screenshot, you can see that open metadata identifies ID number as sensitive. So it basically goes onto the value and it checks whether the value is equal to a PII or not. Data lineage. So data lineage is basically where your data is coming from, what transformations are happening, and what's the final destination of that data. So and you can Open Metadata provided us a way to automatically found the lineage for all the pipelines and everything. They are providing you column level and also the observability layer. Like if you want to see the high level, there you can see it on high level, but if you want to see which columns are mapped to which column and where they're going finally, so you can also generate column level lineage, and finally they allow you to even export that lineage in Excel. Okay, we are also using the data quality feature from Open Metadata. Most of our test cases are custom SQL query based test cases. We are matching the counts between two tables. We are actually checking that this column should not be null, or our pipeline, our data doesn't have any duplicates, etc. So most of our checks revolve around this. We have them currently for data products and for batch ETL use cases, like because batch jobs run at a specific time and you want to check that your data was being updated at the right time and there was no latency between the data. Okay, and they also provide you a data quality profiler where you can check the unique percentage, null percentage, distinct percentage, or if you want to have a custom metric, anything you can also configure. But by default, it comes with, it tells you everything like row count, column count, etc. And if your test cases are successful, it will tell you success, they were aborted, you know they were aborted. And it also tells you in chart form. Red means they were failed, and on failure, you can set up Slack alerts or whatever medium works for you. Lastly, they have a very good feature, data governance. You can manage roles and policies on Open Metadata. You can have roles like if you want, if you're using data mesh architecture, so you will have like different level of different tables, like let's say operations, marketing, etc. So you can manage like who will have access to these assets. So this feature you can manage. Also, they're providing you with attribute level and granular level of access control, and this feature is really good. And you can create your teams, you can create user collaboration. We are also doing this on Thndr. Like we have different teams, we have different users, and we allow them role-based access control and relevant accesses. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Fiza, for sharing. It's always super interesting for us when we see how other organizations are using open metadata. So super happy that you find so many features useful. If any of you folks have any questions about what we presented today or any questions for Fiza, now's the time. Okay, I think that we still have 5 very good minutes to have maybe a more of open discussion of what we had here, but also Fiza is part of our community in Slack. So again, if you are not there here, you have a few links that you can follow in order to start the GitHub, join us on Slack in case that you would like to continue this conversation with her. So any questions that you have? I see here, Anushka, I don't know, folks, if you can unmute yourselves because we were just playing with those permissions. But just
I enabled unmuting.
awesome. Thank you. We see Anushka that's saying how accurate is PII data tracking using ML? So our PII works in two ways, right? Either by directly checking the column name. So basically we have specific rules. So if we see the word name or bank or these kinds of things, but also if you have sample data, okay, you are actually able to basically, if any of your columns is called potato, but your sample data are email addresses, we're going to actually be able to see and understand that this is actually an address and flag that properly as PII. When you're configuring that in the profiler, there's this confidence level parameter that you can play with. So if you see that you're getting some false positives, you can just basically play a bit with that button. But also we would like to hear your feedback. So if there are specific examples that you can share with us later on Slack about, oh, this is actually taking this piece of information and it's not really flagging it correctly because it's missing the tagging or it's just adding some wrong information, please just feel free to share this with us on Slack, and we can keep digging together on which pieces we can tune.
Since Fiza is here, what was your experience with how accurate our PII tracking is?
At Thndr, it was pretty much accurate. Like even if there is a column which doesn't have in regex the name email, but inside that there is an email value, it detected it 100% accurately. So at Thndr, we had a really good experience with it. It was 100% accurate.
Awesome, thanks. Here it says, does PII detection work only for unencrypted data, or is there provision to handle encrypted data as well? So the PII detection on top of the data, right now it's working on the sample data that we're getting, right? So during the profiler, you can optionally toggle if you would like to get like 50 to 100 rows of sample data for your users to be able to easily identify that. So actually, we have time, right? Let me just share my screen. So basically, this is what we're talking about when we talk about sample data. So the PII tagging is going to be based on the information that we can take from here. So if your data is encrypted in your database and the pieces that in this case, the OpenMetadata profiler are going to see are encrypted, I don't think that we have right now a way of tackling that, but I think that this is an interesting use case. So it would be good to continue this conversation as well to understand where things are encrypted or how we could even try to understand the encryption mechanism and override that at least for this part of the processing. Here, Sanjay also says, what is the timeline for Iceberg to move out of beta? What is the feedback from the community for this connector and support for Iceberg with Google? Okay, so these connectors, we usually leave them in beta for either one release or a couple. I think that in 1.5, we are already going to put out Iceberg out of beta. And even if it's in beta, it doesn't mean that you cannot try it. It just means that we might actually be missing yet some feedback from you folks. So feel free to give it a spin, let us know what's working, what's not working. And as always, we are more than happy to iterate and keep covering any edge case that we might be missing. And when you are talking about support for Iceberg with Google, I think that we might need to check if we already have GCS for that, because I think that we do, that we have S3, ADLS, and GCS. But if you are trying it out and you see that it's missing, do let us know. We can add that as well. Hope to see all of you in Slack. Otherwise, enjoy your August, enjoy the rest of your summer, and see you in the next community meeting. Thank you all.